always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Entertainment Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Patrick Kennedy. Another Sunday, another scandal. So much has happened this last week that I am excited to discuss on today's episode. A lot happening with couples. Starting with the announcement of Bill and Melinda Gates getting divorced. And I'll also be talking about the recent allegations about Tristan Thompson, who, as you probably know, is the boyfriend and baby daddy to Khloe Kardashian. He's been involved in so many cheating scandals and rumors, and they have been doing so good lately, or so it seemed, and now more allegations. The episode, however, is not all going to be about lovers, quarrels, and separations. I will be talking about Elon Musk's appearance on SNL. There have been a lot of mixed feelings surrounding that. And last but not least, Patrick's pop culture pick, The Big Shot with Bethenny, which is Bethenny Frankel's new show on HBO Max. Bethenny Frankel is most known for her time on The Real Housewives of New York City, and then her success with her Skinny Girl cocktail brand. She has a new competition-style show in which people are competing in work-style challenges to become the VP of Operations for her company and her brand. All right, here we go. Bill and Melinda Gates are divorcing after 27 years of marriage. They announced this on Monday, May 3rd of last week. And Bill and Melinda Gates are two of the richest people in the world who reshaped philanthropy and public health with the fortune Mr. Gates has made as co-founder of Microsoft. And on Monday, as I said, they announced that they were divorcing. For decades, Mr. and Mrs. Gates have been powerful forces on, so many things. Their vast charitable contributions, affording them access to the highest levels of government, business, and the nonprofit sector. The Bill and Melinda Gates, Foundation, with an endowment of some $50 billion, has had an immense influence in the fields like global health and early childhood education, and has made strides in reducing deaths caused by malaria and other infectious diseases. Over the past year, the couple have been especially visible, regularly commenting on the worldwide fight against COVID-19 as their foundation spent more than $1 billion to combat the pandemic. They did state on Twitter, quote, "After a great deal of thought and a lot of work on our relationship, we have made the decision to end our marriage," end quote. It does sound, however, that they do still plan to work on their foundations together. Even so, the divorce will create new questions about the fate of the Gates fortune, much of which has not yet been donated to the Gates Foundation. A former member of the staff who worked with both Gateses said people in the foundation's orbit were texting and emailing one another after hearing the news, trying to figure out what happened and what it might mean for the foundation. The consensus was, it would be fine for the time being, the former staff member said, but there were questions about what the effect would be, depending on how amicable the divorce is and how they work together going forward the next time it came time to review strategies and future plans. So it sounds like they will do a prenuptial agreement as well. And Melinda is successful on her own. So personally, I don't see this being a nasty split as far as finances go. If you recall, in 2019, Jeff Bezos, the former founder of Amazon, and his longtime wife, Mackenzie Scott, divorced, and Ms. Scott received Amazon shares worth $36 billion at the time and immediately set about giving away billions of dollars in direct grants to a variety of progressive organizations. So perhaps something similar will happen in this case. Apparently, Mr. and Mrs. Gates have faced relationship struggles over the past several years, two people close to them said. There were several times when this relation neared collapse, but they worked to keep it together. Miss Gates decided to step down from the boards. Mr. Gates, not Miss Gates, decided to step down from the boards of Microsoft and Berkshire Hathaway, in part so he could spend more time with his family. And apparently that did not work out. It's also been reported that something a bit different happened, and that Bill Gates' family is furious at him, and there was a secret trip ahead of their divorce. The Bill and Melinda divorce has been a done deal for months, which is what TMZ reported, and they planned to announce it back in March that they were getting divorced, and they rented this remote private island where the entire family went, with one big exception, that Bill was obviously not a part of that. He did not go. So it looks like she had rented out this entire island for $132,000 a night, and the plan was for Melinda and the kids, as well as their significant others, to come to the island, everyone except Bill, and that the family already knew about Bill and Melinda getting divorced. There were a considerable amount of acrimony associated with the split, and also it looks like most of the family took Melinda's side in this. So it sounds like they were angry with Bill, and that's why he wasn't invited. And the reason for going to the island is kind of so no one from the media could reach them and ask about the split when it was announced during their stay. But there was a problem. Lawyers for both Melinda and Bill were trying to hash out the divorce settlement, and there were some outstanding issues that couldn't be resolved at the time of the trip. So Melinda, I guess, decided to go on the trip, and Bill obviously did not. So the takeaway from all of this is it doesn't sound like this was a friendly split by any means, and that it had been months in the making, and that the family was furious at Bill for some things that he had done. Second, it's clear this divorce has been a long time in the making, and finally it appears they have all but reached a property settlement, given the lawyers have been working on it for months, and Bill transferred nearly $2 billion in stock to Melinda on the very day she filed for divorce. So these things are not done in piecemeal. It would almost certainly have been part of a global settlement. So in one story, we have their divorce announcement and statements from them saying they plan to work together, and it all sounds very civil. And then in this other story, it sounds like this has been a plan for months. People are angry with him, and that he's potentially been doing some shady stuff that caused this separation. Now, I could lie and say I hope that the first story is true and that all's fine and dandy, but to be honest, this second one is so much juicier. And if there are shady things that Bill was doing, I am dying to know what those things are. So I will definitely be keeping my eyes peeled for that. I hope it's kind of a developing story. One last thing I wanted to touch on with this is that there is a divorce trend called the gray divorce, which is when older couples get divorced, apparently. In an op-ed on CNN, psychologist John Duffy explains this is something that happens when most marriages or people are together after decades. And this stage, it's when people know each other's routines and their idiosyncrasies and kind of just grow apart. So, after many years of marriage, after you know your partner at their best and, of course, their very worst, many couples will have raised children together by this time and discovered things about one another they admire, as well as ways in which they wholly disagree. One might think that if any of these issues suggested incompatibility, a marriage would end long before the couple was in their 50s and 60s. However, that's not the case anymore. In current, research with these couples, it was noticed that there was a difference in older couples and long-standing marriages. Years ago, the vast majority of client couples who weren't happy in their relationships chose to remain married out of convenience or routine or even a sense of familiarity. But over the past few years, many are deliberately choosing to part ways. And a lot of that is based off of the divorce rate for Americans 50 and over, which has doubled since 1990. It seems that couples are simply drifting apart over time, and one or both people in the marriage are making an overt choice to change course for the time they have left. Recognizing that life is short and precious, I guess, is a good reason. One or both of the partners choose what they feel is the most fulfilling path. They tend to believe that if a marriage is not working for them, it really isn't working for their spouse either. So they afford themselves the space to gain or regain happiness and fulfillment. So perhaps this is the cause for Bill and Melinda Gates' split. Maybe they simply just grew apart. All right. Speaking of breaks, we are going to take one right now. But please stick around because later on in the show, I'll be talking about one of my favorite housewives and her return to television. Stick around.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Entertainment Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. In the first segment, I discussed Bill and Melinda Gates announcing that they are getting divorced. This came as quite the surprise to everyone, including myself, and I also talked about a couple angles as to why they may have gotten this divorce. It appeared that the split was amicable and that they will still continue to be cordial and work with each other on their foundations. However, TMZ reported a much different story. Their story says that the divorce has been planned for months and that Melinda and other family members have been very upset with Bill for various things that he has done. Unfortunately, we do not know what types of things. I imagine they would have to be pretty bad to want to end a marriage. As far as finances, as they are two of the richest people in the world, it doesn't sound like there will be too much of a fight in that area. Melinda is very successful on her own, and let's be honest, neither of them are going to be left penniless in this situation. All right, moving right along into our next story. From Tesla to SpaceX to Saturday Night Live to Mars, Elon Musk was the host of Saturday Night Live last night, and people had mixed feelings about him doing the show, and I want to talk a little bit about people's reactions to this. It is said that he was brought in to save SNL's sagging ratings, but that he could sink the show in other ways, which I will get into. Not only are fans expressing their displeasure, but also some of the cast members were pretty unpleased with this as well. In the days before the Tesla and SpaceX chief executive took the stage of the landmark NBC show, several cast members raised objections, while Musk has gone directly to his 53 million Twitter followers for sketch ideas that he floated around, one being woke James Bond, which he shared on his Twitter account. And am I the only one that's confused by that? I don't get it. But anyway, selecting him as host is outside of what they normally do. Musk is the first person from the business world to host SNL since Donald Trump in 2015, and the first from primarily outside the sports or media entertainment realms since John McCain, Al Gore, and a pre-MSNBC Al Sharpton, who each hosted nearly 2 decades ago. While this does give them a new audience, this could blow up in their faces, and here's why. Musk gained some attention, some of it being quite unfavorable for his cryptocurrency investments, an unexpected move to Texas, an infamous Joe Rogan podcast appearance, a more infamous Cybertruck failure, his belief that pandemic lockdowns were fascist, and skeptical comments about the coronavirus vaccine, though he later walked those back. Now, as I mentioned a bit ago, there were some SNL cast members that were irritated with this decision, and they weren't shy about those reactions. While Musk responded to news of hosting the show by tweeting, "Let's find out just how live Saturday Night Live really is," Bowen Yang, who is a cast member, took to his Instagram in response to that and said, "What the bleep does that even mean?" And I'll let you replace the bleep with what you think it might be. And then longtime performer Adie Bryant posted a quote from Senator Bernie Sanders to her Instagram page that is, quote, "The 50 wealthiest people in America today own more wealth than the bottom half of our people. Let me repeat that because it is almost too absurd to believe. The 50 wealthiest people in this country own more wealth than some 165 million Americans." And that's the end of the quote. So why would SNL move forward with this? There are some explanations. SNL has had a rocky time ratings-wise since it returned to the studio in October for the first time during the pandemic. It was clocking a respectable 9 million viewers at the time of the presidential election, but averages dropped to 4 million soon after and have often hovered in that lower range. It has been said that this could be a way to get a few million of Musk's Twitter followers to tune in who never would, and then hope that they stick around for more episodes. Another big question is, will he be funny? I mean, this is a sketch comedy show after all. So this isn't the first dabble in entertainment for Musk, though. He has made appearances in Iron Man 2 more than a decade ago and The Big Bang Theory in 2015. But those were just brief cameos with very few lines and editing, whereas SNL entails numerous sketches and a minutes-long monologue. And the biggest part is it's live. Daniel Kellison, who is a late-night comedy veteran who has worked with the likes of Jimmy Kimmel, Michael Cera, and Sarah Silverman, said that, quote, "My problem with it, like Trump before him, is it humanizes problematic people, and it's unnecessary." He also stated that he doesn't think the move will give Lorne Michaels, who is the creator of the show, what he wants. He also went on to say, "I do think people who normally wouldn't watch will actually watch, but it's a stunt and not indicative of audience." I have to say I would agree with that. I think it definitely gained more viewers, but I don't think that they will stick around. So, if his journey onto SNL isn't bizarre enough, he also has big plans to get people on Mars and made some pretty grim comments on the mission, stating that people will likely die. And if the comments aren't morbid enough, he was laughing the entire time he was talking about it, and then went into some details saying, "You might die, it's going to be uncomfortable, and probably won't have good food. It will be an arduous and dangerous journey where you may not come back alive. Honestly, a bunch of people will probably die in the beginning, but it will also be a glorious adventure, and it will be an amazing experience." Sorry, but I don't know about you guys, but that doesn't sound glorious or amazing to me. I mean, I'm sure he's just trying to be very honest about what could potentially happen, but in the video he's sitting there barefoot and chuckling about it. It's just a little creepy. What is also wild is that there are thousands of people that have volunteered to do it, and he plans to have people there by 2026. So we will see what happens with that. Now, back to the show. My personal opinion on the episode, because I did stay up and watch it, is that his monologue was actually pretty comical. He mentioned that he has Asperger's, which I did not know, and he is the first person with Asperger's to host the show. So his personality and some of the things he has said certainly make a lot more sense knowing that now. The skits were silly, as most SNL skits are, in my opinion. I find myself always watching it, but rarely getting a really good laugh out of it anymore. However, he didn't do a bad job by any means. The first skit was called Gen Z Hospital, followed by Post-Quarantine Conversation and a new detective show. And the musical guest last night was Miley Cyrus, featuring Kid Laroi, and they performed the first song of the night, which is called Without You. After that was Weekend Update, which I will say was actually quite funny as well. However, I always find that portion of the show to be funnier than the skits. There was a lot of talk about Dogecoin, which is a cryptocurrency, for those of you who don't know, that he's been talking about pretty publicly. I actually own some shares of this and have been watching it pretty closely. And when he did talk about it, it appeared to go down, but as of right now, it's looking like it's staying at a pretty stable position. The second half of the show, there was a Wario skit, followed by Chad on Mars, and then Miley's second song, Plastic Hearts, and the last skit, Cowboy Standoff. So overall, again, didn't do a terrible job, but I wasn't wowed either by any means. I was overall surprised at his ability to be comedic, though. All right, let's head into our next break. When we come back, trouble in paradise for yet another couple, Khloe and Tristan. Stay tuned.
Golden State Media Concepts bring you Book Review Podcast, a haven for bookworms of all ages and the widest genres, from mystery to memoirs, romance to comedy, fantasy to sci-fi. If you love to read, this is the podcast for you. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast.
back to the GSMC Entertainment Podcast. In my last segment, I talked about Elon Musk's appearance on SNL last night. When it was announced, there were a lot of reactions from fans and even the other cast members, a couple of which shared their confusion and irritation for it on their social media pages. There are a couple of theories as to why the show decided to have Elon as the host, as they do not normally have people that are not in the entertainment industry on the show as the host. The main one being that the creator Lorne Michaels is doing this in an attempt to get ratings up. I also talked about Elon's plans to send volunteers to Mars, his comments that people will likely die during these missions, and that he plans to have people there by 2026. Okay, coming back down to Earth now, Khloe Kardashian and Tristan Thompson are in yet another scandal. But before I get into this latest one, I want to give you a little history on his infidelity accusations. All right. On April 12th, 2018, Khloe Kardashian and Tristan Thompson welcomed their first child together. However, while Khloe was awaiting the birth of True Thompson in Cleveland, Ohio, reports began swirling that her boyfriend was photographed getting up close and personal with a mystery brunette in New York City. From there, videos and photos cascaded from sites like The Shade Room and TMZ that claimed to show the NBA player cheating with multiple women. Khloe later confirmed these reports and forgave Thompson, but nearly 1 year later, the couple was hit with yet another scandal. If you've been following the couple's tumultuous relationship, you'll know that Thompson's reputation has been hazy from the get-go. Thompson and Khloe began dating while his girlfriend of 2 years, model and blogger Jordan Craig, was pregnant. Tristan and Craig were together for about 2 years, starting in 2014, though it's unclear when they broke up. Thompson reportedly began dating Khloe in the summer of 2016 after a successful blind date. Jordan Craig reportedly said that she confronted Thompson about it, but he denied everything. She said her suspicions were confirmed when she saw paparazzi photos of him and Kardashian together. Thompson and Khloe stepped out as a couple in September of 2016 and even went on vacation together. Jordan Craig was 6 months pregnant at the time. Khloe's family apparently had some concerns about him in the beginning, stating when Khloe first started dating Tristan, her family questioned if it was a good idea. A couple of the concerns were that he is another basketball player and also that his ex was pregnant. I would say concerning to say the least. Shortly after Tristan and Khloe went public with their relationship, sources claimed that he was a cheater with an existing side chick and that his relationship with Jordan Craig had a lot of issues because of his cheating ways. Craig gave birth to a son, Prince, in December of 2016. She apparently did not list Tristan as the father on Prince's birth certificate. According to TMZ, the baby's father must be present at the hospital for his name to appear on the initial birth certificate, though his name can be added after. Prince's last name was still listed as Thompson. Khloe has never publicly acknowledged the birth of her boyfriend's first child, and Tristan did not acknowledge the birth on social media. He did, however, post a photo of himself and Khloe together on Christmas 2 weeks later. Yikes. So far, so messy, and it gets worse. About 2 weeks after news broke that Khloe and Tristan were expecting their first child together, Thompson was filmed with another woman. Just before the birth of True Thompson, it was published that surveillance video that reportedly had been taken previously, when Khloe was 3 months pregnant of Tristan, appearing to cheat on her with 2 women at a hookah lounge outside of Washington, D.C. The video was recorded on October 7th, 2017, the night before Thompson and the Cleveland Cavaliers played the Washington Wizards. Once Kardashian confirmed her pregnancy in December 2017, Twitter was aflame with the allegation that Thompson had cheated on his pregnant ex, Khloe. Although the rumor had obviously been floating around social media for months, it didn't seem to gain much traction until Khloe's pregnancy was confirmed. On Tuesday, April 10th, nearing Khloe's due date, photos and videos surfaced of Thompson with another woman in New York City. It was reported that Tristan was seen kissing an unidentified woman at a PhD lounge in New York City, and the supposed encounter was caught on video, which the Daily Mail published. The unnamed woman who filmed it told the site, "I was there and he was at the table right next to us with a group of friends and one girl who he was obviously making out with all night." Page 6 later identified the woman as 28-year-old model Lanny Blair and reported that the two spent 4 hours together at the Cleveland Cavaliers Hotel, who were in the city to play the New York Knicks on that Monday night. The pair were then photographed on their way to Soho House and again back at the hotel at 5 a.m. on Sunday. Meanwhile, Khloe was back in Cleveland preparing to have their child, and she eventually had the baby, true, and also all of these cheating allegations had come to light, and her sister Kim had even confirmed them on the Ellen DeGeneres show. After all of that, they remained together. Fast forward to February 2019, where reports surfaced that Khloe and Tristan had split because he had cheated on her again, but with a close friend of the family this time. Tristan Thompson had spent Valentine's Day with Khloe and their daughter in LA, but a couple of nights later, he attended the same house party as Kylie Jenner's best friend and roommate, Jordyn Woods. Some of the people at this party said that Thompson and Woods were all over each other and making out, and that she was sitting in his lap and things were getting touchy-feely. A couple of family friends also seemed to confirm the reports by some of the comments they made online. Jordyn Woods publicly addressed the allegations on an episode of Red Table Talk, which, if you're unfamiliar, is a show hosted by Jada Pinkett Smith and her daughter Willow, and then her mother, Jada's mother, and Willow's grandmother. And on the show, Jordyn took responsibility for her actions and said that she regrets putting herself in a compromising situation. She said that, quote, "On the way out, he did kiss me. No passion, no tongue kiss, no making out, no nothing. I was in shock. I was like, let me just pretend that didn't happen. The last thing I wanted to do was be that person. I'm no homewrecker. I would never try to hurt someone's home, especially someone that I love," end quote. Khloe reacted by lashing out on Twitter, blaming Woods for breaking up her family, and she later backtracked those comments and said it was all Tristan's fault. So, quite the timeline and series of events there. That leads us to this latest accusation years later, where an Instagram model by the name of Sydney Chase has claimed that her and Tristan recently had an affair, while Tristan was clearly back with Khloe. If you have been keeping up with the Kardashians, you will have seen that he has been spending a lot of time with Khloe and True, his daughter, again, and that she has kind of forgiven him, and that the two are basically back together. So just when we thought there was some hope for the two, this comes out in an interview that she did on a podcast, she being Sydney, this Instagram model. In the interview, Sydney claims to have ended the fling with Tristan after she found out he was reconciling with Khloe, and that he has sent dirty text messages and reached out twice since that interview she did on the podcast. So, pretty quickly after these rumors started to gain some traction, Tristan Thompson's lawyer sent Sydney Case a cease and desist, and they are claiming that she is lying. So it's all been hushed for now, so I don't think we will get to see if there were dirty text messages at this time, which is what could make or break this case and these allegations. All right, I need a cocktail after all this. I hope, honestly, that everything works out, whether Tristan and Khloe stay together or not. But honestly, it sounds like she's better off just co-parenting with him. All right, with that, let's take a much-needed break. But when we come back, Patrick's pop culture pick.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Okay, we are back. GSMC Entertainment Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. A very loaded show we have had so far. To briefly recap, Bill and Melinda Gates are divorcing after 27 years, and there are conflicting stories on why, and also some concerns surrounding the future of their foundations. I also talked about the not-so-pleased fans and cast members on SNL after the announcement of Elon Musk hosting the show last night. And in this last segment that we just did, the many, many incidents surrounding Khloe Kardashian and Tristan Thompson and his infidelity. As you know, each week I like to pick a topic of my own to discuss. For this week's pop culture pick, the bee is back. The Big Shot with Bethenny Frankel to be exact, is a reality competition show that premiered on HBO Max on April 29th of this year. Bethenny is most famous for her time spent on The Real Housewives of New York City. She joined that cast in 2010 for 3 seasons. Fans ended up liking Bethenny so much, including myself, that she went on to have following reality shows with Bravo, including Bethenny Getting Married, which followed her relationship and engagement to her then fiancé, and then once they were married, the series changed to Bethenny Ever After. She ended up having her daughter Brynn with her now ex-husband, and their marriage ended pretty horribly, from what it sounds like. While Bethenny has been pretty quiet about all of that, it is clear that her ex, Jason Hoppy, has been a nightmare to deal with, and they are still dealing with custody issues almost a decade later. Bethenny was so popular that she also had her own talk show from 2012 to 2014 when it was canceled, and that was due to a loss of affiliate clearances to NBC Universal Domestic Television Distribution's upcoming The Meredith Vieira Show. So, outside of her work in reality television, Frankel is also the founder of The Skinny Girl, which is a lifestyle brand, and she also has a disaster relief disaster relief initiative called Be Strong. She's also the author for best-selling self-help books. Now, if you remember on the Real Housewives of New York City, she was trying to get the Skinny Girl brand off the ground and wasn't having the easiest time doing it. I remember a couple of episodes where she, was showing up at the other girls' parties and promoting her brand there. They were, nice enough to let her do that, but just wasn't picking up until eventually someone came along that believed in her and helped her get it rolling, to the point that she ended up selling the company to Jim Beam for $100 million. Large amount of money. As I briefly mentioned, the show The Big Shot with Bethenny is an American reality competition streaming television series following Bethenny as she searches for the second in command, so a VP of operations, to her business empire, Skinny Girl, and other brands. So far, there are about 4 episodes out, of which I've seen 3, and I'm actually really liking it. I do feel some of the contestants are not fully qualified, and they could have done a much better job selecting people for it. A few of them just seem very unqualified. However, it is making for good television. However, there are some mixed reviews about the show, saying that it provides Frankel the chance to toy with the competitors for her affection, and that this series is seemingly purposefully unclear about what it's asking of its participants so as to amp up an artificial drama that stems from confusion rather than what it might have been, which is the excitement of talented people being asked to do their best work. So she comes under fire for berating contestants on her new show. Some fans felt the star's tough tactics were going to be a bit too far, and that she also left DJ Nicole Rose in this last episode in tears. Bethenny labeled Nicole as disruptive and claimed she was wasting her time because the DJ did not do well in the group challenge. So a displeased Bethenny snapped, saying, "This is not about you. Why are you crying?" It was pretty intense. The girl was just kind of like defeated and crying on the couch, and Bethenny can definitely be harsh, but these people had to know that coming into this. Like, Bethenny has always been unapologetically her and is very outspoken at times and a little aggressive. Also, personally, I found the girl that she was yelling at, this DJ Nicole Rose, to be extremely annoying, and Bethenny was pretty valid in being upset with her during this challenge. Could she have toned it down when she confronted her? Of course, but again, it's Bethenny. Also, Bethenny is no stranger to this type of environment. In fact, she was a contestant on The Apprentice, Martha Stewart, in 2005. So that series retains the general format of Donald Trump's The Apprentice, including weekly eliminations. However, the style and feel of this show for the Martha Taylor version is tailored to Martha's personality and brand identity. The tasks are centered around Stewart's areas of expertise, which are media, home renovation, entertaining, design, merchandising, technology, and style. Stewart brings her own sensibilities and creativity to the elimination process, with two of her most trusted colleagues helping her make the decision each week. So Bethenny actually did very well on the show and came in second place. Bethenny eventually had Martha on her talk show years later, and she asked her why she wasn't picked. And Martha avoided the questions initially, but finally answered that, quote, "Well, you weren't so likable then. You weren't. No, you weren't. You were a pest. You were a pest, and you were so out there in front of everybody. Now you can be that you're the host." End quote. So Martha also insisted the winner was her own choice and congratulated Bethenny on making it to the final two along with Donna Stone, and said, quote, "It was my business. Nobody told me who to choose," she said. "These are not fixed shows. The apprentices are sort of giving to one on that show. You are sort of given the apprentices. I went through a whole lot, hundreds of contestants that the last 10 or so were really chosen by the producers. So you made it through those difficult producers. That's really good. Just getting there was good." Bethenny admitted that the rejection still hurt her to that day, and she didn't understand why she lost. She said, "It was such a big moment in my life. I wanted to know what you were feeling. I felt like you didn't like me, to be honest with you." So with that said, perhaps Bethenny should be a bit more sympathetic in her approach with these contestants during this process of her show, The Big Shot. She clearly was upset with how her experience was on the show with Martha, so perhaps a bit more compassion might not hurt. Again, that wouldn't make for as good of television. The Big Shot with Bethenny is now streaming on HBO Max, and new episodes are added on Thursdays. Again, I am enjoying it. I've always been a Bethenny fan. When all the other ladies on Real Housewives of New York were successful, she was broke and depressed, and I think that made her more relatable to the average person. It humbled her, and it certainly made her more likable to me. That and her mouth. And she is so quick-witted and entertaining to watch, frankly. So, all right, folks, that is our show for today. We have certainly covered a lot. However, there are always juicy stories to talk about when it comes to pop culture and entertainment. So no fear, I will be back with a new episode on Wednesday. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Entertainment Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write us a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.